Welcome back to Slaying the Craft, the show where we go inside the mind of a thriller writer. I'm your host, Sabrina Thatcher, author, book coach, podcaster, and most of all, fanatic of the genre. I am super excited to introduce my guest that I have here today. Kristin Bird is a USA Today bestselling author, a teacher, and certified book coach. She's lived coast to coast, but with her extended family in North Alabama, her roots run southern deep. She teaches high school English and writes in her local coffee shops near her home in Houston. Her books include The Night She Went Missing, I Love It When You Lie, and Watch It Burn. She has recently developed a series, and the second in the series, An Heiress Guide to Death and Diamonds, was just released on June 11th.
June 10th.
Was just released on June 11th. In her free time, she likes to visit parks with her 3 children, watch quirky films with her husband, and attempt to keep pace with her rescue lab mix. You can find out more about Kristen You can find out more about how Kristen can help you with your own novel at kristinbird.com. And I can personally attest that she is a fantastic book coach and very, very good at being able to pick out all the little details and things and really explain things in a fantastic way. So anyway, welcome, Kristen. So excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Sabrina.
Yay. Okay. Well, let's just jump right in. So your new book just came out, An Heiress's Guide to Death and Diamonds. Can you talk a little bit about the Dakota Green series?
Sure. The first book in the series came out last February, and it introduces Dakota Green, who is more of a cowgirl than any kind of beauty queen, but her mom's last wish for her is for her to become a contestant in this beauty pageant in this huge estate that's a lot like the Biltmore estate. And she does it in order to basically make back the money that she spent on her mother's medical treatment. Mystery and mischief ensues, and she ends up becoming a sleuth as well as just someone who kind of falls in love with her town all over again. I feel like these novels are very much ones of like found family, even though there's a kind of cozy mystery at the heart of it.
Mm-hmm.
So in this next book in the series, she returns back to that same estate, now actually part owner of it. And she is at her high school reunion when one of the old flames drops dead on the dance floor. And then it goes from there.
And then she's off to the races again.
Yep.
Dakota is such a fun character. She's got a lot of kind of spunk to her.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you develop her?
Yeah, so the very first line of the first novel is something along the lines of, you know, if I had the choice between hanging out with a horse or a person, I would definitely choose the horse. And I'm pretty sure that Mother Teresa, the best person ever, would have done the same. And that's just kind of her sass and her mindset. She's almost like a crotchety, hermity kind of 28-year-old. But she has deep loves of a select few people in her life. Having lost one of those people is really what propels her into having to decide whether or not to open herself back up again and find love and friendship anew. And the idea actually came from a conversation that I had with my agent where we were talking about cozy mysteries becoming more of a thing because people want to feel good after COVID. Because this was, you know, back a few years ago that we first talked about it. And I also think that I just wanted kind of that pendulum swing from the darker side of mystery to the lighter side. And so for me, it just made sense. I had 3 dark novels, and now I've just finished actually the first draft for the next book. So
that's amazing. Okay, so, well, that kind of leads into my next question. So one of the things I always like to ask people here is like, why did you want to write dark and twisted? What drew you to this darker genre? And then what keeps you here versus any other genre? I know that you've written some historical fiction in the past and stuff, but I'm really like, why did you want to write these 3 novels and put those out? And then talking about, again, a little bit more about that shift to the mystery and how that kind of is different.
Sure. So as you said, I wrote a historical fiction book that never got published. And after that, I realized that even though I love that genre, I could not afford the time to do the kind of in-depth research that I would need to
Mhm.
do, because that book took me 4 years to write. So I turned to writing something contemporary, and I knew that I wanted to set it in a place that to me seemed dark, eerie, but also fascinating. And I had lived in Galveston, on Galveston Island, for a few years back in my 20s. And that seemed like the perfect place to me to set a mystery like this. I didn't actually know that it was going to be as dark as it was when I first started writing it. My first vision of it was kind of like a mom's book club fiction.
Mhm.
And then as I started writing the story and fleshing it out, I was like, oh, there's some much darker themes in here. And so I kind of feel like I stumbled into the genre in a way,
Yeah.
but it makes sense too, because I love books by Leon Moriarty, and
Mhm.
I had been reading those, for years at the time. So I guess I'm saying I didn't intend to write something so dark, but I'm really glad that I found that space.
Mhm.
And for me, I can't envision a novel without some kind of mysterious element at the center of it.
Right.
To me, that propels a book forward
Mhm.
in a way that some other genres don't. For
Right.
example, when I wrote this cozy series, it does have an element of romance, but it had to have the mystery at the heart of it to keep
Mhm.
me interested personally.
Right.
And I think it just depends on your reading personality and your reading style. But looking back, I realized that all of the books that I like have some kind of mysterious element, even if they're not quote unquote a mystery.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel now that you've done three of each, right? Three standalones and the darker like Southern suspense, and then three of these more contemporary mysteries.
Mhm.
What like do you have a preference? Like, are you leaned either way? Is there any way that you, or like how do you feel? Like, what's the difference between writing those two things, like and your experience
Mhm.
as a writer?
Yeah, the series of the cozy mystery feels a lot more formulaic,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it easier to write,
Yeah.
which allowed me to write it even faster than I wrote the first three. But it's really not something that I think would keep me engaged long term. It was
Mm-hmm.
like a great break,
Yeah.
like I could see going back and forth and writing dark light, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Because I feel like exploring both of those tones is an interesting kind of experiment for a writer, and also like allows you a break when the darkness gets too dark or when the lightness gets too light. Yeah, so I think that I'll probably kind of pendulum swing back and forth. It may not always be like the series, but I do think like I have to have a break sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that makes sense. Um, yeah, I think too that's the thing, because we do have like there are authors out there that write super dark, and they write like a whole like all of their books are super super dark,
Yep.
and which is, I mean, great. I love to read those, but I do think that what you're experiencing probably as a right, my guess is like
Yeah.
having that light and dark, like you're also flexing your skills in a different
Hmm.
way, right?
Right.
Because it's a little bit different to write something really dark
Hmm.
and what that does to kind of in your psyche and in your mind and all of those things than writing something that's a little bit lighter, more fun, kind of
Hmm.
quirky, perky kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And I feel like too the language is really different. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
since the cozy is so formulaic, it does have that much more of a genre quality. I mean, I think all everything I write is genre fiction, but
Yeah.
I do think that my first three could be more of like upmarket
Yes.
genre fiction,
Mm-hmm.
because book clubs that I visited will have like really interesting, sometimes controversial conversations about them. Whereas I haven't done many visits for the Dakota Green series, but I can't imagine us like getting in the weeds
Yeah.
about like some real
Yeah.
serious issues. It'd be more like, how do you write? That kind of
Yeah.
thing, which is fine too. But I do feel like the first three are more, I guess I would say, like lyrical in the
Mm-hmm.
language, and I'm more precise and I spend
Yeah.
more time on the line editing side of things.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it might take people longer to read. So it really is just like, what kind of mood are you in? Are you going to the
Mm-hmm.
beach today and you're going to be in and out of a book? Take Dakota.
Yeah.
If you're going to be like cozy by a fireplace, and
Yeah.
focused on your reading a little bit more, then pick up one of the darker ones.
Yeah. Read, watch it burn while you're burning the fireplace.
Yeah. That's right.
So, one of the things you and I have talked about before, and that I continually learn from you about, is writing in multi POV. And I know that in your first 3 books, they were all multi POV, at least 3, if not 4 points of view, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So how is that that experience of change? And I believe that you write straight through as a linear, as if a reader would read it. How is
Mhm.
that experience of changing minds as you're going through? Because each character, they're the star of their own story. So how are
Mhm.
you managing through that experience with multiple characters?
Yeah. I love writing multi POV. And I think that a lot of new writers prefer to write in one voice. But for me, multi POV came naturally. And that's why my first 3 books are in that perspective. Um, and I do write chronologically, although I do like mix things around as I revise and I'll add
Yeah.
a scene here and there. And I try to make sure the voices are balanced, not that everybody gets the same amount of time on the stage, but that, the reader isn't forgetting about a character,
Oh
or
yeah,
the
like you only
reader.
have one point of view way in the front, and then you're like, oh wait, who's this character?
Right. Or that a reader, who really likes a certain character isn't missing out on hearing from them.
Yeah.
Um, so I really prefer that genre or that way of writing. And sorry, what was the original question
The
that you
question
asked?
was like the multi POV. So as you're like each character is that they're a
Uh-huh.
main character in their own head. So as you're changing this,
Oh,
like
yes.
how are you
Mhm.
transitioning? So I find that challenging. The books I've
Yes.
been working on multi POV go for one person, I'm in their head, I like totally get it, and then go to the next chapter, and I'm like, wait, well, getting like
Yeah.
whiplash, totally different feeling.
Right.
How do you handle that? Manage that?
So I think it comes from my background in journalism. That was my undergrad. And we always had to have 3 sources for any story that we set to print. And for me, thinking about how one character would see it, how another character would see it from a different angle, etc., that's actually really helpful for me. So I
Mhm.
do think it kind of comes naturally. But getting in and out of their voices is more the challenge for me.
Yeah.
And that is something that usually comes in the revision process. Like all the voices kind of sound the same, I feel like, in my first draft.
Hmm.
And then when I go back through, I think about like what would set this character apart. For example, and I Love It When You Lie, it's set in the Deep South, but it's 3 sisters and then a sister-in-law's perspective. And I made like a continuum of how Southern they were, right? So like the oldest sister who had lived there her entire life was the most Southern, and she
Okay.
used the old phrasing. She, would speak more slowly. She would drop certain or extend certain syllables, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the middle sister who had gone away for college but come back, she was in the center of that. And then the youngest, who was in her late 20s and was away at school in New York, rarely used those kind of Southern phrasings.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a way for me to really distinguish the voices. And I don't know that the reader realizes that as they're
Yeah.
reading it necessarily, but hopefully what they feel is like, if they open up a chapter, a page to any place in the book, they can kind of figure out who's speaking right
Hmm.
away
Yeah.
because they've noted those differences as
Yeah.
I've been writing. Yeah.
That's really interesting because as you're saying that, I, as a reader, did not see the different, the way you're saying. I definitely could
Hmm.
distinctly know I was in a different voice, but
Yep.
it wasn't like how Southern that they were. But now that you're saying that, like, absolutely, that makes sense. And I would imagine for you as a writer, helps to like be able to really get into their mind, right? And know like what to say.
Mhm.
So that's something I find really fascinating, right? Like we have stories and we have characters, all of these things, but it's what the characters are actually saying and what they're thinking, but really what they're saying in dialogue that helps to build the actual story. I
Mhm.
find. And that's also really hard to do.
Mhm.
And yeah.
It helps sometimes too, I think, to envision a person who's close to that voice as you're writing it,
Mm,
like there's a character in there, the grandmother, and we don't see her perspective, but we do get little snippets of her voice. And that was a combination of my two grandmothers who lived in North Alabama. So um, for me, it helps to like almost plop my characters onto someone in real life that I know
Yeah,
so that I can kind of mine the way that they speak
that
for
makes a
that.
lot of sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I was talking with someone else the other day and was just like, I how do you make a fully fleshed out person?
I know.
Guess what? That's actually whoa. There's like a whole step back. So I know that you went to school for journalism, but did you have to like do any kind of studying, or like how did you fully get into being able to embody a voice? Like, did
Mm.
you listen to people talking in a coffee shop? That's always like the recommendation, right? Like, what did you do?
Yeah, so I think that all of the interviews that I did actually were really helpful because you start to get the nuances of the way that people speak. And my journalism professor, something that I think was unique about her was she did not want us to take a recorder as often as possible, which I know that sounds kind of crazy in today's day and age when you've just got everything on your phone and you can press
Yeah.
record. But what she wanted us to do was start to be able to capture with our own writing whatever they were saying and in their voice. She was also a stickler about us not changing quotes significantly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't know this, but depending on the newspaper that you're reading, they may have different policies on changing the quotes or not.
Oh wow.
And I don't mean like having the person say something completely different, but
Right,
I
right.
mean like in terms of like um if they use the incorrect word.
Like the little bracket thing that they
Yeah,
put in
yeah, they'll put
sometimes.
bracket, right.
Yeah.
So sometimes some newspapers, from my understanding, and this may be more like local newspapers, but they will or won't change the quote or will or won't put those brackets.
Okay.
So, writing things in people's voices the exact way that they said something
Yeah.
is something that became like really routine to me. And it was setting me up for fiction in a way that I did not realize. And I
Yeah.
remember I was pretty close to my the head journalism professor, and I remember a couple years after I graduated, we grabbed lunch one day and she was asking what I was doing, and at that point I was going back to get my master's in literature because I knew I wanted to teach and maybe do something with fiction. And I told her, I said, I think that when people won't read the news, they might read a fiction book that is about real life things that
Yeah.
happen. And she was like, that's such an interesting way to look at it. And so I was like, I'm just feel like I'm kind of leaning more toward that fiction side, but fiction that where I learn something
Mm-hmm.
as I read, or that really captures a moment or captures a kind of situation that would be important. Like in Watch It Burn, I mean, it's basically like a microcosm of burning down the patriarchy,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it,
Literally.
yeah, yeah. And it's in this really small Texas town, and it doesn't feel like it's this, huge event on the world stage. But for these women and in this microcosm, it's everything.
It is.
And
Yeah.
I feel like it points out the patriarchal elements of our society that just kind of like maintain the status quo that we might not even think about sometimes. So I guess what I'm saying is like I feel like I took those journalism skills and then transferred them into this kind of fictional place. And it's a lot easier to write fiction because you don't have to deal with what people say or getting it accurate. You're just like, I'm gonna make it up.
Yeah. It'll be as good as I think it's gonna be.
Yep.
Um, um, okay, so let's talk a little bit about your support for other authors. And I'm just gonna say personally, like Kristen and I met on Instagram the first day I started an Instagram for
Oh,
becoming
I
an
didn't know
author.
that.
It was the first day. Yeah, literally. It was my first post. And then we started messaging. And since then, I've really appreciated how often you've been willing to talk about things, going into details, spitballing stuff, but also a lot of teaching about what is going on and the craft of writing. And so I know that you are a book coach, and I wanted to see if you wanted to talk a little bit about that. You have an amazing Substack that's super valuable to authors. Do you want to talk about those a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, my book coaching is something that came out of my love for teaching and fiction. I teach high school students, but I wanted to kind of dip my toe in the world of fiction writing and teaching fiction. I didn't want to do it at the high school level because I didn't feel like I could sit with high schoolers, students every day, 8 hours a day, and still like love it and be passionate about it. So I kind of transferred it to like, oh, well, how could I like help other emerging writers who are my age, in the writing world? And I have gotten to talk about multi-POV, and I've gotten to talk about really like the business of writing too. And the business of writing part, I really tackle on my Substack. It's called Print Runs and Paychecks. And I found it so valuable, any like tidbit of information that I could get when I was starting out. And I just thought like, I want this all to be in one place. And the closest I found that is Courtney Mom's book.
Oh yeah. I think I have it back here.
Yep. What's
Before
that
and after the
called?
book deal?
Yep, Before and After the Book Deal.
Yep.
That is an amazing resource. And I actually asked her to come and speak to some of my students when I taught a very short 3-week fiction writing class to my high school students. But looking for information out there was like kind of piecemealing it together, I felt like. And so what I've done on Print Runs and Paychecks is kind of just use myself as a case study and say like, well, I may not have everyone else's information, but I'll give you mine.
Right.
So I give royalties. I give like my rejections with names removed, that kind of thing, because I feel like making this industry more transparent so that people feel like they're not alone is really important. And when I first reached out to you, I mean, I was in the stage, I don't even know if my first book had come out.
Your book wasn't even out yet. You were still another like 3 months before it came out. I think we started talking in December.
Yeah. And so I remember in the lead up to that book coming out, me being like, what am I supposed to be doing? And what am I supposed to expect? And why am I so anxious?
Yeah.
And I was like, just craving like a community of writers. And so I feel like that's something that I have spent the past few years really trying to cultivate for myself. I mean, very much an introvert, like a lot of writers, but I went to Thriller Fest. And you were the only person that I knew there. And we were meeting in person for the first time. I was like, I hope neither of us is too weird. Like, hang out with in person.
All those writers were all weird.
Yep. But not too weird to hang out with.
Yeah.
The right kind of weird. So, yeah, that for me, like looking back later on, I was talking to one of my like school friends about it. And they were like, you went there alone to New York and you didn't know people? And it's not like my personality.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to cultivate this for myself. And so whatever I need to do to make that happen. And it's just really important for me, like, to pay any little bit forward that I get, because other people have paid it forward, even people I don't know. Like, I consider the people who run the Publishing Rodeo podcast as paying it forward, and I've never met them.
Yeah.
But I actually went and read one of their books because of that podcast, and it was amazing. The Book Eaters. Yeah.
But so, yeah, anyway. I mean, I think that that's super helpful because we're talking about like the craft of writing and stuff, but really what happens is that there's the craft and the art, right? And this kind of the art science of it. But then the other side is that if you want to share your story with the world, you have to publish. And that is either self-publish or traditional publish. And both sides have their businesses. Either way, it's a business. And I think that if you're wanting to share your book and your stories with people, you're going to have to consider the business side of things. So paychecks and print runs and paychecks, I think is really helpful because as somebody who started out, I've enjoyed like, okay, I don't enjoy your rejections, but like it helps me to see that.
Yes.
Like I'm not saying I'm not happy for you. You're getting rejected. I am happy for me that I'm getting to see what is coming, what can be expected. Right. Yeah. So then when I went through my first time of querying on my first book, I knew more what to expect. Like I felt more prepared. And I think that's because of people like you sharing those insights. And Substack is such a great place for a lot of this, where people can really get into the details. I mean, I know like Andrea Bartz has a whole Substack that's about query letters, right? You can see successful query letters, things like that. So if you're not on Substack, listeners, I highly recommend it, because there's just so much information that's out there. And it very much is, I'm sure that there's other stuff, but I'm so in the writer space, like I don't know what else is out there. Which is
I'm
cool.
writers and artists, so I get like things that people have just painted, and it just makes me happy, and that's like my whole feed. I'm like, this is much better than the standard social media.
Way better than standard socials.
It's really cultivated to my algorithm of like writers, artists, writers, artists.
So go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like this little anecdote kind of helps to explain why I have print runs and paychecks. So I was at school one of the last days this year, and one of my colleagues was like, "Oh, how are the book sales going?" And I was like, it's okay, but Amazon, a lot of people have been protesting, and so they've been boycotting Amazon, which is a huge place for authors like me with this cozy series to be found.
Yes.
For better or worse, right? Like I love indies, and I beg people to buy the print version from the indies, but they can only get, I think, the ebook from Amazon.
Yeah, through Kindle, KU, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they were like, "Oh, well, I thought people were just reading your book all over the world every day."
And you're like, well,
Instagram.
I wish.
and what I said was, I was like, "Oh, no, that's for the publisher." Like, I mean, basically Instagram and TikTok, I feel like they're there so that we can say to the publisher, I think as we should, we're trying.
Yeah.
Like, look. And so if you've got a couple people who send you something 1 week, you just like post it to your stories, and then it looks like all these people are reading your books. But it just reminded me how like my Substack is the place where readers find out the real truth, right?
The real truth. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's open for everybody. That's not behind a paywall. So, but of course my colleagues aren't like in that writer world, so they're not going to look for that on Substack. But I just thought that was a really good example. I was like, oh, the perception has worked.
Yay!
For my publisher. Like, look at me trying. I'm amazing. But the real deal is over here where I tell you the truth.
Yeah. Here's what's actually happening, and the insanity of it. And I think like, I say this all the time, but I just, as readers, I did not appreciate exactly what an author had to go through in order for a book to get into my hands, whether that be a self-published or a trad published, especially trad published. I'll say, like, the amount of hoops that you have to go through, and the percentage of actually getting to that point, even getting picked up by a publisher, is super small. And then once you get there, then the reality of, are they gonna pay for marketing your book, or are they not? Like, that's also a question, right? And there's a lot of things that are about the business, and then making it a viable business for yourself, if you want that to be like your full-time thing. Otherwise, I think a lot of authors end up having multiple jobs, right? Streams of revenue,
streams of income. Yeah. And actually, even indie authors who are full-time indie authors will tell you like they have multiple streams too.
Yeah.
And they might do like Kickstarter. They might do speaking gigs. They might co-author a certain set of books and then have their own stuff. And I feel like that's probably more common in the indie world.
Yeah.
And I just know about that world because I'm fascinated by it, and I want to try to indie publish at some point. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. And then on the trad side, it's jumping through like these tiny little hoops of like, are you going to be that 1% that stands out for the agent? I did hear one time though, this encouraged me when I was querying. So for anyone out there querying, take this, do with it what you will. I heard an agent say one time that if you actually write the query in the proper way, then you move to like the top 10%.
Oh, wow.
Of their pile.
Yeah. Like, that's how minute it is to even get up to that, like just writing a proper query letter.
Yes.
But you can listen to the shit no one tells you about writing, and they talk about it all the time. And, eventually I would love to talk about that here, all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
And as you said, Andrea Bartz has the query. But yeah, if you just go to their website, look at their guidelines, make sure that you're following them as best as you can, then I think that that's huge.
Yeah.
That will what I think is above the rest.
Something that's interesting that you taught me about doing is actually writing like not necessarily the synopsis, but like the book cover copy
Mm,
first, right?
yes.
And so my experience in this book that I've been working on over the last year is I've written several versions of a
Hmm.
pitch, right? Several
Yep.
versions of what this might look like. And it's really helped to be able to keep the through line. This is what the
Yes.
story is. And when I finally got the query right, or the pitch, the back cover
Hmm.
copy right, I was like, oh, I get what I'm doing with my book. Like
Mm,
it clicked. Like this is what I need to focus on. This is what
right.
the story is. And yeah, I think that like that was like a huge thing that I learned. So how has that helped you? And like how do you usually put that together for yourself?
Yeah. So for me, if I'm writing multi POV, especially, the back cover copy helps me figure out who the main character is,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes that is actually surprisingly hard to do, because
Yes.
you think growing up, in third grade, second grade, you're like, who's the main character of this book? Like that should be easy to figure out, right? And so as a reader, it does feel pretty easy. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
this is the character who is the backbone of the book. This is the character who's connected to all of the other characters. This is the character who is going to move the plot forward.
Right.
Like those are all great questions to figure out who that character is. um, but when you write out the back cover copy, you find who is like holding everything together in a
Whose
way
story is
that's
it?
helpful. Whose
Whose
story
story
is it?
is it? Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it's not the character who opens the book, which is
Yeah.
surprising.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which of my books? I think it was I Love It When You Lie. I don't think the main character starts that book, right?
No,
But
I
she's
think
like
it's
the
the
second or third
sister-in-law
voice. Yeah,
starts the
yeah.
voice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, you just might be surprised who is kind of like the one that connects to everybody else and holds it together.
Yeah.
So,
And I also
yeah.
think it gives you that, like what I was saying, like the through line, it kind of helps you
Mhm.
understand like what is it the character's emotional arc going to be, or what's the thing
Yeah.
that is going to change what their stakes are. Looking at it like that and then applying it back to when you actually draft,
Mhm.
it's helpful to like just go back to that.
Yeah.
And as you make changes in your draft, right, like it's not set in stone. So as you make changes in your draft, I go back and change this and then
Mhm.
go back and forth. And then, once like I said, once you finally kind of get it, then it's kind of is like an epiphany just sort of cleared, like, oh,
Yeah.
all right, this is where we're going.
I actually made a query Mad Lib that's on my website on my book coaching
Oh
tab.
yeah.
You don't have to go through anything to get it. You just go access it. But it is one of those things where it helps you lay out like characters, stakes, and what they're going to do to, or what will happen if they don't, meet their goal, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That is very cool. And also I will just give a plug, like, and a thank you for listening to my millions of very bad, like, can I get away with this pitches that
Oh,
are just
but
like,
you have perfected this most recent
try.
one.
I
It
do
was
feel good.
really
I'm not
good.
gonna lie. I feel good
Mhm.
about it.
Yeah.
But like literally, I mean, as being new and trying to figure this whole thing out, like writing is one thing, pitching is another, like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
queer again, the business side, all that stuff. There's
Hmm.
different skills hold on. So there are different skills you have to have. Um, but what was I saying with it? Oh, so yeah, so I mean, it was great. Like we talked about everything from, I was like, what about if it's like Mr. White from Reservoir Dogs meets the bride from Kill Bill? And nope, that doesn't, you can't do those things. And it was really a lot of like testing because trying to figure it out. But when you've done, like when you went through this, did you find something similar, or was it like, because I think the shit no one tells you about writing wasn't out yet, right? So some of
Right.
the resources that we have available now,
Yeah.
even 5 years ago, weren't around.
Yeah, when I wrote
Yeah,
my query that got my first agent, because also, as Courtney Mom talks about, it's common to have more than one agent, even if you are lucky enough to get one, like it's not for life
yeah,
necessarily.
yeah.
But when I got my first agent, yeah, I went back and looked at that query and I was like, well, this actually does not follow the shit no one tells you about writing. They have like the hook, book, cook
Yeah,
method,
yeah,
where you hook, talk about what your novel is, and then the book, which is the pitch, and then the cook, which is your biography.
yeah.
And I mean, it fulfilled those things, but not quite in the right order and not as succinctly,
Hmm.
right? So I was just using other query resources that I had, and it was the pitch, though. It was book part, right? It was
Yep.
the hook
Yep.
that really like drew her in.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I had to query again later for my second agent, it was a lot more streamlined in my mind. And I
Yeah.
mean, part of that's because I had already been like helping other people with their queries and that kind of thing. And I think teaching is the best way that I learn.
Yeah.
So, you know, that one was really like simple. I feel like for the
Yeah. Yeah.
agent to be like, I know what this is about. Do I want it? Do I not?
Mm-hmm.
Which is really helpful because agents are reading, hundreds of queries a week
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. I think that what I'm trying to get to here is like it takes practice. Like you're not going to get your query
Yeah.
right on the first try. You're not going to
Oh,
get that
yeah.
book pitch on, just like you're not going to get your book right on the first try. Like, but putting some effort
Yeah.
into it up front, I think is really valuable.
Yeah. And when I
Yeah.
did my second round of querying, I was really disappointed a couple of times with agents getting back to me because I had a lot of requests, which is partly because I had been published. But I think like my query was good, like because I
Mm-hmm.
knew what I was doing. And then a couple of the agents were like, "Oh, this isn't what I thought it was gonna be." And I was like, "Oh gosh, was my pitch better than the actual book?"
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just querying. That's
Yeah,
just
it's just
querying.
how it is. It's how it is. It's how it
Yeah.
is. Okay, so if you could teach a writer one new thing that you've learned, what would it be? And can you teach it to me right now? And it could be tactical, like everything from show don't, like a sample of show don't tell, or a
Yeah,
character
yeah.
thing, or just like a tip, you know?
I think when you are going through the revision stage, the line editing stage, so this is much later in the process. Don't worry about this with the first couple of drafts. Really watch your dialogue tags. So the she said, he said, he
She
said,
should.
yep. Yeah, really watch those. And when you need to use them, I would say, as Stephen King does, make them simple. He
Mm-hmm.
said, she said.
Yeah.
But when you're able to, just drop the he said, she said, and instead, in the same paragraph as the dialogue, write something that character was doing.
Mm.
So, oh my goodness, she said. Instead of that, oh my goodness, her eyes lit up
Yeah.
with surprise. I mean, that's not a
That
great
gives it,
example.
no, but it is
But
actually, it is
yeah.
because you're saying like that is a show, right? Like she said
Yeah,
it, she
yeah.
showed her eyes lit up. So that wasn't needing to say, she said excitedly. She said,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, right. So,
Yeah, and it will help your audiobook narrator down the
mm-hmm.
line. And so I was just looking at actually Spotify. They have a new service where they're asking for short stories by authors.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna write
So
that down.
just put that out there for
Hey,
anybody.
everybody, guess what?
Yeah, I think they're pretty long short stories, 10 to 15,000 words, I think they said, but that's about an hour commute. I learned about this from JF Penn on her podcast, The Creative Penn. And one thing that I saw in there was they want books that can be read aloud. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because they are an audio platform, right?
Right.
And so one of the tips that JF Penn was giving, or Joanna Penn was giving, was to take away those dialogue tags as much as possible because it keeps you in the story
Mm-hmm.
when you're listening to it. So it's something that I feel like I'm actually learning to do myself,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Like, I don't feel like I've been great at this or mastered it, but I do feel like it's a good tip to pass along, especially since the audio market keeps rising and rising and rising.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And another great tip from the audio perspective that we also taught, well, our mutual friend Megan taught us, she's an
Mhm.
audiobook narrator. If your character has an accent, put that accent description as close as possible to the beginning of introducing that character.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it right away, but as
Right.
close as possible, because you just don't want an audiobook narrator to be 6 chapters in and then, oh crap, there's a Southern accent.
Yeah, I know. Or
Yeah.
3 books in. I've been dealing with that with my 3rd book. I'm like, "Ooh, do I want to give this character?" It's like a very minor character, but I'm like, "Oh, he might be important." And I'm like, "I don't know if I should do that at this point." But yeah.
But it goes to speaking to what we talked about earlier, which is character voice, right? So that all
Mm-hmm.
kind of goes into the same sort of thing, and thinking again, So this is why writing is so much more complicated, I think, than people realize, because you're thinking about, not only are you making a good story, you're doing mystery, suspense, you're playing a game with your audience.
Yep.
So there's that. You have to solve a crime, which is a whole other skill.
Yeah.
So that's
And
just
hide the clues from the
and
reader
hide the clues,
as
like, so
well as you can.
all of that stuff. And then you have to think about how is your character voiced and like all of this. You're managing so many different things
Yeah.
when you're writing. But I think the main thing to remember there, as I'm saying this, I'm kind of saying this to myself as well, is it doesn't all need to be in the first draft, and it won't all be in the first draft, and that's okay. Like, just tell yourself the story. Your second draft, just tell yourself the story. Like,
Yep.
it is
The
okay.
magic happens in those later stages when you're polishing and shining, not when you're just getting the foundation.
Right. Right. So I was like, that's definitely been an interesting experience for me with that kind of switch.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have some rapid fire questions for you that I ask all of the authors that are joining me. Okay. So here we go. What is on your desk?
Oh gosh. A bag of peanuts, my phone, some water, and a bunch of electronic gadgets. I'm actually at my husband's desk. My desk is typically a coffee shop.
Yeah.
But I figured it might be too loud. So my desk travels with me. And it's funny because I just went to Galveston to write for like 2 days, 2.5 days, and I wrote 7,000 words at the coffee shop.
Isn't that amazing? It's just being away.
Yeah,
it's so
being
amazing.
Away. Yeah, and normally I can write 500, maybe 1,000 in a session now. So yeah, being away and being at a coffee shop really helps me.
That's amazing. So, well, this kind of goes to my next question, which is, what ritual, if any, do you have before or after you write?
I notice that I often check my email before, and I'll do like a little bit of the business side of stuff, whether it's like the writing business or the teaching business side of things. And for some reason, like having that out of the way helps me be able to focus better.
Because it's just not this like little nagging thing of like, hey, you've got to do this
thing.
thing.
And I've already accomplished something.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, oh, look at me. I can do the things.
It's just that trick. I love that. I think that's a fantastic one. We talked about this already, but if writing multi-POV or multiple timeline, do you write straight through like a reader reads, or each section together?
Yes, straight through. I will say that in my third book, I inserted a voice towards the end of one of my first drafts. So that was the first time I think I had
done like a kind of more straight through-esque feeling.
Yeah, and then I went back and dropped in her voice at different places.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. What is the most bullshit piece of advice you've heard?
Oh gosh. Oh. Bullshit. I think, okay, I mentioned Stephen King and the thing I appreciate about him, and then I'm going to say something I don't appreciate.
Happens.
Like, I actually don't agree with his adjective and adverbs thing completely. Like, sometimes, so his advice is like, cut out your adjectives and your adverbs. Like, make it really tight. And I'm like, okay, sure, maybe. It depends on the voice.
Yeah, like, it depends. Maybe they're very, like they're a lot. Maybe they're a lot.
Yeah. So when I read his stuff, I'm like, oh, there's an adjective. And I get like his advice is like the majority of the time.
Not say, like we said earlier, she said excitedly. You don't need like replace that with something else. Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say is from the business side, and this isn't really advice, it's just like this common misperception that like all writers are like so successful and not having trouble getting words on the page. Like, it's know the struggle behind it. You know, just remember like everyone is struggling and people are on submission and being rejected that you love and that you know, but they're not putting that on social media, right? Except for me.
Yeah.
Apparently, well, on Substack.
Well, hilariously, I was having a session with my book coach this morning, and we were talking about the exact same thing, and she's like, no one puts out all the hard stuff. Well, I mean, you kind of have a lot of that. So I was like, it just sounds like I'm whining a lot is what I feel like, but it's the the reality.
I think it's good.
Yeah. And I think last week we had JT Ellison on, and she said she's 35 books in, and she's like, still hard, still it. And I think that's so important if you're gonna pursue this as a career, and even if you're pursuing it like it's a dream or whatever. It's a reality. The reality is that this is hard.
Yep.
And to do it well is hard.
Mhm.
So what's the best piece of advice you've heard?
To let your writing rest in between drafts, to
Yeah.
put as much time between finishing a draft and then reading the next one. She says as she's going to start
I was like,
reading her first
isn't
draft she finished
your
yesterday.
book due in like a week?
Oh yeah, I don't have the luxury of time. Yeah, but no, that is the best advice, that if you have time, use
Yeah.
it. And I would say like put a month between. And I have done that before. I actually did a whole month of not writing a summer ago and I loved it.
I bet. It was like such a break. And then I bet you were excited when you came back, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it renews your passion.
So what is the darkest idea you've had that has scared you about yourself?
Mm. I have this idea that I have not written yet, but basically it would deal with multiple personality or dissociative identity
Ooh,
disorder.
yeah.
And there's someone in my family very close to me who has dealt with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I I think it scares me from a personal vantage point.
Yeah.
Like, am I willing to put out into the world like my experience dealing with this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if that's exactly like what you meant by scary, but scary for me,
Yeah.
is to put that out there just because it feels so personal. And I
Mhm.
feel like there would be things I would write into it that I wouldn't even realize were like experiences actually had until I wrote them. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
It's amazing. Like when you're on I was telling my book coach this morning, I was like, I had an epiphany yesterday. I was just kind of journaling and I was like, oh my God, this book is an entire metaphor for my life that I didn't even know. Like what?
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it happens.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I referenced JT, but she also talked about her book, It's One of Us. And it took her 10 years to write it because it was a very personal book as well. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's a very valid thing when you know you're
Mhm.
going to dive into something that's going to be challenging for you as a person, not as a writer, as a
Yes.
person.
Yes.
That's really
Like, will I
interesting.
actually be brave enough to write
Hmm.
this? And when is the right time?
Right.
When will enough time have passed? That kind of question.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. How many drafts do you do before you share with anyone?
I prefer, if I have the time, to do a full draft and then a read through myself, like a self edit,
Hmm.
before I give it to anyone. So I guess that would be the third draft that they
Okay.
would be seeing.
Yeah.
And it usually goes to my mom and my sister for feedback. But with this series, because it's such tight
Just
writing
no time,
deadlines,
huh?
I'm like, here, mom, read these first 100 pages.
Hope you like
tell me
it.
they're great.
Okay, so what part of the process is your favorite?
The revision part, I think,
Hmm.
because I like the polishing and shining, and I also like the lack of pressure of having to create new content.
Yeah.
I enjoy that part if I have time, like to stretch and to think about it, but it like weighs on me in a different way that revisions don't. Like
Yeah.
revisions, I can pick up my computer in 15 minutes and
Yeah.
like look at a
Like
couple
fix a
pages,
scene or something. Yeah.
pop in and out. But I feel like for writing content, I really need to be able to sit with it for at least like an hour or so,
Yeah.
if at all possible. I don't always get that luxury. Sometimes I am writing in 15-minute spurts with kids and stuff. But yeah, I think that revising is probably the part that I like the best.
And what part is your least favorite?
Mm, probably copy edits, like having to approve everything
Yeah.
from, and I'm like, oh, I'm so stupid. I wrote it.
And
I
you teach
contradicted
English.
myself.
You teach English. This is like what gets me the most. You teach it.
Yeah.
So that helps
Yeah,
me
yeah, yeah.
feel a lot better
Oh
about
yeah.
your situation.
Yeah, I feel really dumb in the copy editing part, I think. But I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that there are people out there who are copy editors and
Yeah.
who can catch everything. And in a series, they are catching stuff from my first book for my second book. And I'm like, I
Oh,
don't even remember that.
that
It's
is really cool.
amazing.
That is
Yeah,
really
their
cool.
minds are very sharp.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. And then last but not least, what is your old school favorite mystery or thriller?
Mm. Okay, so I was raised very conservative Southern Baptist fundamentalist. Like,
Mhm.
I couldn't have much pop culture,
Yeah.
right? But there was this series that I loved as a kid that no one will have ever heard of.
Mhm.
It's like Mandy, the Mandy series, and it's
Okay.
these children's books that came from to the Christian bookstore.
Mhm.
And it was this girl named Mandy who was like 12 years old, and she was living in the like late 1800s, and there was a mystery every book. It was just like a little middle grade book, but a mystery that was very cute and charming,
Yeah.
right? Like, and occasionally a little bit scary. Like, it would just dip a toe into scary,
Like a
and I'd be
Nancy
like, oh.
Drew-esque is this kind of like
It was like the super fundamentalist version of Nancy Drew. Please, listeners, go and Google the Mandy Christian book series. I think it was from the 80s. I think that's when it was written. Yep.
There's so many things I want to say right now. Like, which is like the mystery is, oh, look at that. How did she have a baby when she didn't?
Right?
Okay, that's amazing. Okay, well, that's fantastic. I sound so. I'm gonna have to look at it because I think that
Yep.
sounds hilarious.
Mhm.
But I love so you were able still to find that mystery and thriller, like that mystery
I
thing that got you
was.
even when you were younger,
I
and you were
was.
like
Yep.
not thinking you were gonna find it. You found it.
Yep.
That's amazing. Well,
Mhm.
Kristen, thank you so much for joining me today. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. If people want to find you, where do they need to look?
KristinBird.com is a great place, and it has my email there and Instagram and all of that. Yep.
Fantastic. And if you would like to find me, you can find me on Instagram at Sabrina Thatcher Author. And if you want more information about my book coaching services, you can visit crimeandquill.com. Until next time, stay sharp and right twisted.